Hey, what's up, friends and fam? I was having a discussion with my fiance, and I was telling her about this friend of mine who, you know, every time you talk to him, he's always pointing out faults in people, and he's a fault finder. And so, I mean, after just listening to conversation after conversation with this guy, I started realizing like this is gossip. You're really good at seeing faults in other people and talking to me about it. So finally I started like hinting like, well, maybe you should pray for him. Let's pray for him. Or, hey, maybe you should go talk to him about it, have some healthy conflict. But see, that's healthy conflict is, it's uncomfortable. And so until you can really have that heart to love people and want to help people grow, you're just gonna fault find. And I was asking Sarah, my fiance, like, why do you think that they do that? And she said, I think they do that to make themselves feel better. And I said, wow, that sounds about right. Like an insecurity. And so I looked up a Bible verse on fault finding, and Jude 1:16 says that these people are grumblers, complainers, and fault finders. They follow their own evil desires and boast about themselves. And they also will flatter others for their own advantage. And I realized that this person can also be flattering. But it reminded me, and I told her, that reminds me how I went through this discipleship one time years ago. And I started working for the place. And I noticed that as people would come, they would come broken and they would come humble. And their life may have been in shambles or a mess or whatever. And they would be really humble at first, and they would rest, and they would get settled in. But then after that, they would get pride would kick in. It would seem like after a week or two, they would start noticing the faults in the place. They would start noticing faults in leaders. They would start thinking, well, I could do it better, and they would start saying stuff. Why don't we get to do this more? Why don't we do that more? Why aren't things done this way? Or they would have their own opinion about stuff. And so there was like a little saying we had, like, until you've been here for 6 months, you're not allowed to like give input on how things should be done, because there was a spirit of fault finding behind them, and there was a spirit of stubbornness. And I looked up 1 Samuel 15:23. It says, for rebellion, they would get rebellious. People, all kinds of people get rebellious towards their boss or whatever. And it says that rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft. And stubbornness is like the sin of idolatry. So you're idolizing when you get like that. If you're bucking against authority and or anybody, friends, family, anybody, you're kind of making yourself and your own ideas and own ways an idol to yourself. And because you can do it the best, you know what I mean? And so I said something which kind of spurred this video. I said, it's like they don't like where people who are fault finders, they don't like where they're at, and so they don't like where they're at from this, in the discipleship program. And it makes sense. They don't like where they're at, like in life. If you don't like where you're at in life, you want to feel better about where you're at in life and feel better about yourself. They don't like where they're at in life, so therefore they don't like where they're at. They don't like where they're at in their relationship. They don't like where they're at with the discipleship program. It's really easy to start fault finding when you want to feel better about yourself, or if you don't feel good about yourself, then you can fault find. It's a trap. So don't fall in the trap of fault finding. That's the encouragement of this video. And I hope and pray that you would be content with where God has you and the relationships, where he has you in the relationships. So if you do have an ability to discern and see things in people that may be defective character, I pray that you would be assertive and have healthy conflict with them, have healthy boundaries. Like, be willing to have the uncomfortable conversations with them about what they're doing wrong that you're seeing, but only after you've prayed for them for a while. Like the person I talked to that I saw had a fault finding tendency, I'll pray for the individual, and then I'll listen to them, And then I'll give some hints like, hey, well, why don't you go pray for so and so? Why don't you go talk to them? You know, hinting that this is gossip or whatever. But eventually, like, I've earned the right to have the uncomfortable conversation with them. Like, hey, I think you have a spirit of fault finding a little bit, because if you notice, like, every time we talk, you're punching holes in other people's actions. And so, you know, you might want to look into that and like think about changing that. Ask yourself, why am I a fault finder? You know, why am I a complainer? Why am I a grumbler? Why do I have a problem with authority? And, you know, just deal with it and ask God to change it. And so that's the point of this video. And I hope y'all have a good night. Love you. Bye.